Quite a moment at the White House today. The president struck a surprisingly moderate tone on immigration, or seemed to, while some congressional Republicans reminded him of the stakes involved.
Chain migration is so insidious. It is the fundamental flaw in the immigration policy of the United States. If any conversation about DACA is being held without that consideration, I agree with border security as well, but any conversation about that is not going to go anywhere in the United States Senate.
Hume is Fox News' senior political analyst, and for good reason. He joins us to assess today's events. Hey, Britt, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, I'm the oldest guy, right?
Well, there's
some
that.
People would say, yeah, some people would say senior moment political analyst.
I think you earned it.
It looked for a moment well, I appreciate that. It looked today as if the president himself had had a senior moment when Dianne Feinstein, as you reported earlier, said that she was hoping that there could be a clean bill on DACA fix, that is to say the bill to let the Dreamers who are here illegally stay in the country. Yes. And the president said that that's what he wanted too. And the conversation proceeded along those lines, whereupon it became clear to the Republicans sitting around the table that that really isn't what Mr. Trump understood by a clean bill. And Kevin McCarthy, the House Majority Leader, interjected and said, Mr. President, I don't think that you quite understand what she means by that. She means a bill that would be DACA only. So, oh, no, I don't mean that. I mean DACA with the additional security measures, which is to say funding for the wall, an end to chain migration, and he added, an end to the lottery system. And that was what you heard Sonny Perdue pick up on in the soundbite you just played. So by the time all was said and done on this, the president had demonstrated he didn't understand what is, to all of us around Washington, a well-known term, that is to say a clean bill, but he did not really change his position on the issue.
So my sense, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, but that Republican voters are watching their leaders more carefully than they have in years past because Republican voters in general are to the right of Republican members on immigration.
Yeah, I think that's certainly true of some Republican members, and certainly a large number of Republican voters. And these are precisely, of course, Tucker, the voters who supported President Trump with his hard stance on immigration. And, in which he suggested not only do we need to stop illegal immigration, but we need to get control of legal immigration as well. And, that's sort of where he came out on this today. And I might add, Tucker, that what was interesting about the response to this session today, in which the president did something you rarely see a president to do, which is to sit there for an hour negotiating with congressional leaders of both parties with the cameras rolling.
Yes.
You just don't see that very often, and I don't think it's the kind of thing that would square very well with the description of President Trump in this most recent book about which there's been such a sensation, which portrayed him as a total ignorant dunce with no grasp of policy, who never reads and never listens to briefings. He seemed pretty well briefed on these issues, and he spoke of them with some fluency. And in general, I thought most people, most unbiased people looking at that would give him a pretty high marks on it.
So do you think it's possible that his private posture will be different on the issues, on the specifics of border enforcement, chain migration, et cetera, than we saw today in the public meeting?
Well, I think by the time the public meeting was over, his posture was the same as what we've heard him say before, which is he's willing to do DACA, wants to do DACA, which is to say he wants to let the Dreamers stay here. He'd like to do that, but that he's going to insist on getting some security measures as part of any legislation to do that. And the question then becomes, of course, well, how much of the three things that he's asked for, border wall money, end to chain migration, and an end to the lottery system, will he be able to get? And when it gets down to it, would he reject a bill that didn't have as much of what he wanted as he's seeking? And I don't think we know the answer to that yet, but the position, that at least is the position that he staked out.
Interesting. I think voters will be watching carefully. Britt, thanks a lot for that.
You bet, Tucker.